So whenever we are trying to create, usually we will always go with the Java project, right? So you will have something called Maven project. Whenever you're trying to import, there's something called Maven project in your editor. So we just need to go with that. And so every artifact will have three parameters. One is group ID, artifact ID, and version. So the versioning is like basically like if you are going for a production and it's a stable version, then you'll have the actual version like 2.3.2 or 2.3.5 without any naming convention post your prefix. Like after 2.3.2, you'll not have a snapshot or you'll not have a release. You'll have the entire version with defined version. So I can show you that before creating it. So this would be like this. If it's a stable version, we can see as release. If it's something like temporary, like hotfix versions, instead of having dot, it is like completely 2.0.0. If it's like stable version, then you might see only just that version alone. So you can see like for Java, you just have 1.8. And for a few things, you just have the relevant version, just the whole number. But sometimes if it's a dot version, it's a hotfix, like something they have enhanced or the bugs would have been fixed as part of that. That would be coming as part of dot version. And few cases you might observe this as snapshot in few cases. So the snapshot is nothing but it is not a direct fixed version. It's like something a base version has already been created, but it is not in the higher environment. It's not in production. It is in the lower environments, like your testing environments. Then you'll have it as a snapshot. So this would be the versioning which we follow usually in our services. Next thing is like this would be the package name. So whenever you create a package, you will always have something like com dot something, right? So this would be the group ID. And the artifact ID can be similar to group ID, or you can name it in a more efficient way. So if you see some other dependencies, so you have the group ID as org.pi test, and they just mention the artifact as pi test. So it's with our control, like whoever develops it, either you want to maintain the entire package structure or you just want to maintain a unique name for your artifact. You can have it in either way. And this would be the relevant version. So every Maven project will have these three things so that it will be easy for us to download the relevant versions. So these dependencies are nothing but the runtime jars. Okay, so all these jars will be downloaded in your So this will be downloaded under Maven dependencies. So you have all the relevant versions, whichever you have installed, would be downloaded in your local system for first time. So the only first time your download will take a longer time, and every time post that it will be easy. All your downloaded versions will be available in your local path under C users. You will create something called .m2 directory. So under this, in this repository, all your dependencies would be downloaded from our cloud or in the online repositories, remote repositories, and it will be present here. So you can use those jar files directly into your system. You don't need to have it downloaded and post that. You need to right click on your project, go to the build path, configure build path, and then in this you have something called libraries, add external jars. So this was the system which was followed earlier. We download all the jars, keep it in one place in our system. And whenever you create your project, we go and add it externally and then build the system. So whenever you package your entire Java file, right, or entire var file, it will be an add-on. So your package is like little big. You might expect 100 MB, but it would be with 200 MB because of these additional jars. So to reduce the entire package size, what we have gone is like the Maven system has been introduced, and this will reduce the packaging size, and we don't need to download every time whenever you're doing a packaging or deploying. You just need to have your own application code, and this kind of things would be done only for the first time wherever you install, and later then if you have any additional dependencies adding on, only that would be downloaded in the local server or in the local repositories in the system. Post that, it will be just only your source code which you wanted to execute. So the size of packaging would be very minimal than the previous days how it was. So this is the main purpose of why we are going for Maven. Apart from Maven, we also have something called Gradle. Okay, and that looks similar to the Maven. So let me open one Gradle file. So even here you have the same structure. The only thing is like the syntax would be little different compared to your pom.xml. The pom.xml is completely using an XML notation. So it is like similar to your markup tag. So this is the tag you need to use, and under this you have to define your relevant artifacts, which is like very user friendly. Whereas in compared to Gradle, it is more of a script language. So you need to know Groovy language. Based on that Groovy language, this particular structure has been imposed, and you can download all your dependencies just by giving the same thing, like your group ID, artifact ID, and the versioning. And you have a little different structure. So we'll experience what these kind of things are, and we'll compare together the Gradle and the Maven structure, and we'll try to download the package related to OpenCSV, because we're going to work on the CSV part. So we'll see how we are going to download that and implement it. So till now, any questions?
Clear till now, sir.
Okay. So every time whenever you're trying to create a new Maven project, it will ask us to give the relevant group ID, artifact ID, and how your package has to be. So let's say this is my test demo. Okay. So test.demo is my group name. And even I have this as test.demo. So my packaging is just that. Yeah, I don't want to import anything from my parent or something. You learn about this parent project once you learn a better idea about your Spring concept. So till then, this should be fine for us. Test.demo. And what is the artifact name you want, that should be fine, and then give finish. Just a moment, my system is behaving a little weird.
Okay.
So before going to that, you see something here called archetype, right? So this is the one where you tell that like where you want to download the dependencies from. So what type of dependencies you want it from, and where do you want it from? So if you say like Tomcat server, so you get it from Apache. If you go for OpenCSV, that is again a package you are getting from a third party called OpenCSV. So there are multiple things. So if you see under Maven archetype, you have something called web app. You have something called a very simple Java application. So if you're when you're trying to launch it for the first time, we can just go with the normal Java type. Okay, so there are multiple archetypes. So these are the structures like where you want to get it download from.
This one is not clear for me. Can you repeat?
Yeah, just a moment.
Architecture.
Every time, let's say like I wanted to create from archetype, you just say add archetype. If you don't have the archetype is nothing but the group ID artifact in the version which you are actually wanted to download from. So if you don't have anything, you can create your own, like if you have multiple self projects, you can create your own group ID artifact and version and the relevant versions, and you can download it. If you're not interested on the creating of your own, but you wanted to have it from the system provided APIs, like how do you use your util package and date packages from your Java APIs? Same way, if you want to use the archetypes from your own Java Maven projects, then you can go and select the relevant one. If you see Apache Maven archetypes, you see Maven archetype J2W simple, you see portlet, profile, site, there's something called web app, there's something called this, and there's a simple called hello world. So there are multiple things which helps us to create a very simple structure of the Maven thing. So let's go with the hello world. Sorry. So right now in this IntelliJ, I'm not importing anything from the archetype. Let me show you in the Spring Toolsuite how to get it from the archetype. So in this, I'm just creating a new project with a normal structure, and the artifact I'm just giving as Maven demo, and then I'm finishing it off. So let's see how that gets created. By the time we'll do the same thing in our thing also. So I'll just show you the Spring Tools would also, but this would be the structure. So whenever you create a new project of form, this should happen even in the STS. So whenever you create it, you will get only these three things: the structure of your group ID, like how you want to have your packages, and the relevant name and the versioning. You don't have anything else in your structure. So now you need to define few things. So there are multiple things called as So this would be the comments you need to use under XML. So here you have something called plugins. You have called repositories. You'll have dependency management, and which will internally get all your dependencies. So the subtags would be dependencies. There's something called build package. So these are the main things you need to understand when you're trying to import any kind of external libraries and how you want to build your package. So everything would come in this structure. Okay, so now let's see how to add our dependency. So we are going to add a open CSV file. So what we can do is, so we can go here and open CSV Maven dependency. So in the Maven repository.com, you can see the versioning, like which one do you need to use, which is stable version, which I can prefer. And based on the relevant build tools, right, you can get it downloaded. So now we are going to go with the OpenCSV 4.0. I'm just copying this entire content and I'm going to go here and paste it under this. Okay, so this is done. But if you see, this dependency tag is not a right structure. You need to have something called as dependency management before this. So we are going to implement that dependency.
Hello?
You're able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but there was some silence for some time.
Okay. So under this, you have something a tag called dependencies, and you need to have this one. So this is like a list of values. So how do you have list of array list? The same thing. This is your root tag, and under your root tag, you can have any number of dependencies. So I'm just going to give this and post this. How do you get it installed? So to get it installed, there is something commands, like how do you execute Java program? You have again some commands called as MVN is the command to use your key, like under how do you use for Java. The same thing, MVN will be the key. And here you can just check the version using the -- version. And for MVN clean, there's something called clean and there's something called install. So the clean is like, this is nothing, but it creates all your .class files, okay? So whenever you wanted to make sure that your package is very clear and it is not having any kind of uninstalled or unsatisfied or incomplete packages, then you just give clean and post that you install it freshly. So if you don't have the relevant version of jar in your system, then it will be installing for the first time. But if you have it and you are not sure whether you have the right version, and sometimes what happens whenever it is getting downloaded in under the repository.m2. So in this, right, say example, now let me go into some package. So let's say I'm going into it. And here, if this there is no jar file here. So there is nothing, you have repository file, POM file, SHA-1 file, but you don't say anything as jar file. So let me go again and go to some other thing. So you can see something called executable jar file. So this is the one. So sometimes whenever you download, this jar file would not be downloaded either because of low internet connectivity issues, or sometimes the package may not be available in the particular repository. So if you have your own organization repositories, it might not be uploaded, or proxy issues, whatever might be, your jar would not be available. In that case, what happens is entire structure would be created in your local. Since there was no jar, your entire system will be corrupted and you can't execute your programs which are dependent on this particular jar. So for that purpose, what we do is we always ensure that we are cleaning and installing it every time. so that you have the fresh piece of dependencies. And if suppose if your package is not very clear and it is impromptu, then you can make sure that you have everything on spot and then you can execute your actual Java program. So that is the thing, you might have to do this. So let me go to this file project structure and execute through the command prompt itself. So this is the one. So let me go to CMD. So let me give Maven clean. So this is the command. So it does nothing, but there's something called Maven clean plugin, which does the clean. So these are the life cycle stages. Let me tell you that. But before that, you just need to give Maven clean. So now we have given OpenCSV dependency in our pom.xml. We'll see whether that is getting installed. So Maven install. So my build is success. To confirm whether I have that package downloaded in my system, let me go and check. This is com.opencsv with 4.0 version. So let me go to the repository com, and here I have CSV. Sorry, OpenCSV, right? OpenCSV. So which has been downloaded long back. And here in this, there's 4.6 version, and I have executable jar already downloaded. So now the version which I have given it is 4.0. So let me try with some other one which I have here. So let me go with 5.0. Okay. Now let me go to the command prompt and again say Maven clean install. Next. So whenever you try to give the install, under this, you will get created your entire Java project. So right now in your Maven project, you don't have anything created, any Java file, you don't have anything. So that is the size of the file is just 2 KB. And you under the target where your usual dot classes get created, right? So right now we don't have anything. So let me create one thing here under source, main, Java. Let me say new Java class, CSV parser. Just nothing else. So let me go again. So now let me go to the target under classes. You can see a CSV parser. And now under this snapshot, this would be the jar. So wherever you wanted to transport your jar or you wanted to use this in your other applications, you can just use this jar and you can like however you install your external dependencies, right? The same way in other projects, you can use this. So it's not like you need to always have some third-party libraries as your jars, which can be imported your Maven. You can even have your separate Java project. Say, let's example, this is one project and this jar has to be used in this particular different project. I can still go and update in my pom.xml. So that is the way your jars work, and this will be like entire package. So the entire logic will be working from this jar. You don't need to maintain the entire Java package as a source code.java file in your other projects, which might reduce your dependencies, because when this particular thing is compiled, your package size would be very much less. If it is a normal Java code, then the size of that package would be little higher than the executable ones. So that is the reason it always comes under the target folder, and we always execute this jar file alone. Okay, now let's go to this. and just create our own CSV parser and execute it. So till now, like the commands on Maven clean and Maven install, are we good? Like you will be seeing the life cycle of that. So I'll show you the entire Maven life cycle, the stages and where this plugin repositories come. So before going deep dive into that, I just wanted to make sure that you have an idea on how to write your dependencies and install them. Are we clear till this?
Yes, Megha. Hello.
Yeah, I'm able to hear you. You're able to, right?
Yeah, clear to me now.
Yeah, okay. So you know how a CSV file looks like, right?
Yeah.
So let's have on something. Yeah. So let's create a new CSV file here. Okay. So let's have ID, comma name. And here we have say 101, comma. Java. Okay. So I'm just having a normal thing. So in if you now let's go into our external libraries. It's not getting external. So by the time it gets installed, I'll show you the life cycle here. So you can see here, the Maven demo has 9 life cycles. Okay. So the first one, which you right now explored, right, the clean part. So which is basically like whenever you want to clean out your entire dependencies and packages which have been downloaded in your system, that would be cleaned up. So there is something called validate, compile, test, package, verify, install, cite, and deploy. So each one will have its own place. Predominantly, like most of the time, what we use as part of our programming practices would be clean and install. We never go and test. When you write your own test cases, then you might use test. The other things are we never use of, because that is something which comes internally under each life cycle. So we don't go and do explicitly the compile part. We just execute the clean, install, and then the test one as per the things. And if you see in the plugins, they are again similar to these. The thing is the clean package, like whenever you do clean, this is again internally coming from something called ORG Apache Maven plugins. So even when you try to clean here, you got the same structure. So this is the jar which is actually cleaning your thing. So every task is done again by some other Java program, and we are just using that as a command to execute it. So again, you have a compiler which actually compiles your Java program into .class files, and the deployment part, the installation part, and then the packaging, like how do you want the package to be structured. And here you have the install and the respective commands to use it. So if you're going for clean, you just have clean or the clean help. And if you go for install, you just have install. And if you're not sure like where to install, so this would be the commands executed from your IntelliJ. But if you're trying to execute from Spring Toolsuite or from your command or from Git Bash, it would be just the command with the just the lifecycle name. So Maven and the lifecycle name. You don't need to have clean clean or clean help or something like that is not required when you're not using IntelliJ. And there are something called resources. We'll explore one by one. The Surefire is again for your test cases. So the life cycle, the first one, how does this life cycle begin? So we'll go with that. Let me just use this and then come back there. So first one, the clean, which is very much known, which is just for clearing up. We'll see the next one, which is in your life cycle, validate. So in this validate all your group ID, artifact ID, and your version. These are the main things whenever you're actually creating your Maven project. So these things has to be validated at first. Okay, and only if these information are available, like this is very much mandatory information, only if these are available, the validate would actually work on. Next, the compile is nothing but all your Java classes would be compiled into your dot class files. Now the test. So there's something called test. So whenever you write your Java program, under the text, there's also something called Java package. So here what happens, whenever you're trying to create a parser, you will create a relevant Java class file, say CSV, parser, and test. Okay. And this test file will have all your test cases. So the basic test cases would be like, say for example, you have given add method. Okay. So the add has 2, 3. So this is the scenario, but this add can be with no data, or it can be with negative data, or sometimes one data is present and the other data is null. So any combinations which you need to execute this program and make sure it is not throwing any exceptions, such kind of things will fall into your test cases. So I'm just giving a very sample example of add. So in this add, you can actually go ahead like the scenarios. The first scenario would be like add with no data. So basically it's null. The second thing is add with 2 positive integers. I'm just going with integers now. So this would be the test case, and final output, whatever you get, has to be the expected output. So there's something called assert. Okay, so the assertion, which will actually validate your final output. We'll see how to do that little later. Now, the third scenario will be add with 2 negative integers. And the fourth scenario will add with first value, and the second is 0, or second is non-negative, negative values. Okay, positive and negative value. So you means these kind of combinations will get increased. Okay, so the same thing, the vice versa can happen here. So this would be another test case, and this last one would be like both the things are giving some other input, not integer. It can be any other data type. So add with different data type, but let's say the integers itself is passed in string. So in that case, how do you evaluate it? What are those exceptions handled in your system? So all these test cases have to be taken care whenever you write any method with all possible permutations and combinations. You need to write your functional test cases, so that in future, whenever your system, your application goes for live, you will be very clear that all your functional individually for all scenarios, technically there is no issue. But functionally, if the issue comes in, we can pitch in and fix as a defect, or a debug it, or fix them as a bugs. Okay, those will be more of a functional related issues. But technically, these issues should never come. And that is the way of a developer to complete your entire piece of code, whichever you take care of. So these permutations and combinations are very much important. So how do you validate these permutations and combinations? For that purpose, Maven is explicitly giving you a test command where all the Java files which are under the test package will be executed, and it will give you like only if these test files are positive and like everything is happy flow, only then I'll make myself Maven build as success. Otherwise, this, if any one of scenarios or if any error is being thrown from these test case files, then your program will not be built, your package will not be built. So it is like error. So you have to clean it out, fix it out, and then make again a build. So for that purpose, to validate your test cases, we have a life cycle called test.
So this test is like passing the test cases, right? That we do in HackerRank.
So it will not compare any data set, or it will not generate any report. But internally, what happens if you have any test cases here, all those test cases have to execute. So let me show something here.
So in this case, we need to give the, for example, we need to give the sample input and the expected output, right?
Yeah, I'm just showing a sample test case so that it will be easy for you to understand. So let's say this is my one of the test case. Okay. So here what happens, all your test cases will not have any return type, because internally you're going to call the actual service file, right? So let's say now in this CSV parser, I have let's say like not static, let's have a normal method add, and you say int a comma int b. And you're going to return something. And it is going to return int. So what happens if this is your class? What we do in the test class is we just create an object. So CSV parser equal to new CSV parser, and then through this parser, right now I don't have the test dependency, so I might end up with an error. I'll just show you in the main method. So CSV parser dot add, right? So in this, what happens? All this entire piece of code will be executed in a main method. So no need that this has to be a main. It can be anything in some method. So here what I'll do, I'll pass the positive values for the first time. And this will return me some value, right? Int result. What I'll do after that, I'll have something called assertion. Okay, you need to have the JUnit package, otherwise that will not be happening. So there's something called assert dot equals, okay, which will have the expected value and the actual value. So your actual value which you're getting from RES is the expected result which you're actually getting it from, right? So that should be in the actual, what you receive on your execution. And the final output which you expect as part of 1 plus 5, the 6, has to be the hard-coded value. And now you compare this, only if they pass, your test case is success. So this way we evaluate your test cases. So in my scenario, what happened is I'm getting some value for this particular thing. So get a voice cost. And for the voice cost, I have given some value in this format. Only if these two are matching, the assertion is true. So this assertion is something which you get again from your JUnit test cases, where you can evaluate all scenarios, all kind of scenarios, so that the execution, if you see here, this is the actual method which is getting executed. So here in this method, the entire piece of code as it works in your system will work. But what are the inputs it required for will be mocked. So all your initial data will be mocked, and then you'll execute your actual service. And after execution, whatever you receive as the final actual response, that you will actually validate using the assertion statements. So if you go into this assertion, you have multiple assertions like assert equals with values of different data types, and you can assert your null, or if it's a Boolean, you can assert. If it's something criteria or situation, you can do those kind of assertions. And if you're planning to get an exception, null pointer exception or something, you can even catch that exceptions here. So this is assertion.
So there is one plus assertion throws or assert throws.
You have here? I didn't see it.
If you scroll little below, yeah, scroll below.
Yeah, yes.
Assert throws.
So assert throws. So this way you can give the relevant expected type, and then you can have the thrown error, and you can compare it. So if, for example, if you get null pointer exception, you don't want to execute an entire piece of code. It is like halt on the first line itself. In that case, you can just use assert throws, and then you can stop your piece of code so that it won't go to the next line of code. So those kind of things also you can evaluate in your test cases. So to do all these test cases and to execute them from the Maven perspective, we have something called test plugin or a test lifecycle. So whenever you wanted to execute the test cases, you have to give Maven test. And if you don't want to execute, you can even skip your tests. So whenever you're trying to build, you know, like my few of my test cases are getting failed, but right now I just wanted to see the build success. So the main thing is the Maven clean install. It cleans the entire target folder. Okay, the entire target folder will be clean. All your new packages, if you want to download some dependencies, the latest one which you have added through pom.xml will be installed. And once it is done, you have to build your package. So in this installation, it's like kind of, it executes your test cases, it executes the new packages, and then it also deploys, and it gives you the final jar. So it's like a single command which does everything. So that is the reason most of the developers will never go for separate test or separate deploy, separate packaging plugins. They just go for this because this install does internally everything. So we never call the other things, other commands explicitly unless there is any need. So this test is something like if you don't want to execute all your test classes, right now you're just focusing on your build success or failure. There is basically the jar is getting created or not. For that purpose, you can just use the test by skipping your test cases. So this is the third life cycle which will be using. And the fourth one is the package. So whenever you create your dependency, right, there is something called packaging. Okay, so this packaging will have all the types, like whether it's a var file, whether it's a EAR file, or whether it's a jar file, or you just want as it is as a POM file. You don't want it like a, if you go for microservice architecture, there'll be like within one package, you'll have like 100 projects. So, but the main project will have it as a jar, internal project will have it as POM. So all your internal projects are just a POM file. So all the multiple POMs together will be added to your parent project, and there your jar file will be created. So there are multiple ways you can create your package. So right now what we are trying to do is we are just going with the jar package because it's a just Java application. So if it's a web application, you might just mention it as var file. If it is an EAR is like similar to Maven demo, you will have multiple separate jar files, multiple separate var files, and multiple dependencies. Like it is like just an ad hoc piece of code which just gives you a parser logic or any kind of formatting logic, anything which is separate, only a piece of code which can be in Java or Python. It can be in any format. But the final packaging is required in your enterprise thing. Then we compare everything and make it as a EAR. So there are three kinds of packaging. So right now we are focusing only on the jar, which is Java archive files. So this kind of packaging to be done, you will be using the package explicitly. The next one would be your verify. Okay. So in the verify, what you have it like all your integration test. So what is integration test? So like whenever you write or build your application, right? So let's say e-commerce application. So what happens in e-commerce after login, you go to the product page, you order something and you do a payment. You do a checkout and then you do a payment and finally you get a success or failure message. This is the flow of your e-commerce project. So in that, this entire flow should not be missed when you're actually building your application. So for that, what we do is we create integration tests, okay? Either as top to bottom approach or in the vice versa. So whether you want to go from login to payment or in between from order to payment, like whatever flow you want to check, maybe because of the new features which you have implemented in your code and you want to see whether there is any breakage happening or is everything existing flow is working fine or not. And if suppose the payment is something which you're integrating with your gateway or with any bank like HDFC or Axis or Kotak, this is something which is happening with a third party. Now, what we do is we know as an internally, this is the flow happening, but explicitly, this is the flow. So the login is something which you are happening either with Gmail or Facebook or through mobile. Okay, this is again a third party communication. the list of products which is getting displayed can be something which is getting populated from CMS, the content management system. You're getting all the information from a third party called content management system. And this order is alone something happening here, and the checkout is happening, okay, within your e-commerce application. So now when you want to log in, the login can happen from your application or through Gmail or through Facebook or through any mobile OTP related things, whatever way they are going to log in through this. So now you want to perform an integration test in this login, either by the user registering for the first time. So the use case would be like user creating his own credentials in our application. That would be the first case. Now the second scenario, he might use any third party API to connect and log in. So what happens here, you need to authorize that user. So you might not sure like whether this user is already available in Gmail or Facebook or something. So let's say only for Gmail and Facebook. So what you need to do, from when the user logs in, when he gives the email ID, he has to go and connect the Facebook or Gmail server and make sure that this is a authentic user, and they acknowledge us back with some token, okay, if they are true, so that the entire session the user can be available within the system. If not, they might reject with some message of a rejection code or something. And with this information, we would be able to make sure that the user is authorized so he can go log in successfully. So this is a use case. So how do you do this? So for that, this Facebook and Gmail, based on the user ID, you have to validate this user, because you might, some users will give the x@gmail.com, but you never know whether x@gmail.com is present or not. So every time you're dependent on this third party server to make sure it is a validated one or not. So you need to go hit the Facebook server and get the response. So whenever you write a test case, you can't every time go and hit the actual Facebook or actual Gmail. So what we do is we mock our third party responses, and then we test our entire flow every time there's an enhancement happening, so that the integration will never fail when the real-time application is up. Did you get my point here? Kirba, you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's
You understood, right? Why we need an integration test. So basically, whenever we integrate with third parties, so the integration can be even with a database. So if you have something like Oracle DB, you can't create a mock Oracle DB every time. So what we do is there's something called H2DB. So which is like in-memory database. Okay, so all the database related scripts or execution, or if you want to fetch some data based on test data, everything, what we do is we create something, our own schema. Okay, so what we do is the similar table structure which you create in your Oracle, we do the same create scripts, everything, but it will be executed in your H2 database. So when does this H2 database gets activated and when does that close? So whenever you're executing the Maven clean install, right? Only at that point of time, your H2 database gets activated. All your test cases will get connected in your system. All your scripts will be created at that time. And then you'll do all your insertions, deletions, whatever operations you have actually expecting from that particular test case, everything would be done. And if suppose everything is fine, your build is ready. If suppose any one test case fails, it's an alert for you that your actual integration is failing with your database. It might be an issue with your script or sometimes with your H2DB. So if it's an issue with H2DB, that can be avoided. But if it's an issue with your scripts or something which can be corrected, so whenever you're trying to do some kind of DDL SQL statements or something which you put like alert or alter or kind of insertions, this will not impact us when it's happening in the runtime environment, because nowadays we are not creating, in like earlier days, we are not creating a patch SQL jobs or patch SQL tasks to insert or alter in the production. So if it's a Java based application, what we do is we have now the same called Liquibase. So through Liquibase, what we do is we create our own scripts. So what we do is whenever there is a Java package is building out, we create our own Liquibase package. And in this particular file, we have our own script which has to be executed. So this will have like a precondition whether this particular table is present or not. And then we check and then we do alteration and then we commit the changes. This would be the way. So there is no third-party person's help whenever we are trying to do some changes in our database. And if suppose if your build is failed in production and this particular change should not be present, then we also make sure we have a relevant rollback script too. So we'll have the relevant rollback script and we'll maintain everything in the single file. So whenever this entire package is getting built as a jar, you will have everything in build. So no third-party person is required on the building or packaging your jar project or VAR project. So this is the way right now the system is working in industry. So earlier what happens, we create a change request, we give all the insert scripts or alter scripts to the respective production team and they get executed it. But right now, if it's too critical and so confidential system, that is happening. But if not, we are just going with the latest open source tools. Okay, so for that purpose, we have again something called Verify. Okay, so this Verify is something which helps in validating the integration test. Okay, that is the main purpose of the Verify. And finally, the install, which is like very much important when you're learning the Maven commands. So this is install, which actually packages everything in your local path. Okay. So wherever your project is, under your target folder, there will be something with the name which you have created. So here you have Maven demo as your artifact, you have a snapshot. So right now this is a version which is not production version. So you don't have it as release. But if you're planning to move this as a release version, then you can update in your version as release and you can build your jar as per that. So whatever naming convention you wanted and your industry is expecting, you can have the relevant versioning here. And once your jar is available, post, like how do we deploy to the servers is like we either take this jar and give them, or there's something called Nexus. There are a few artifactories which are available. So what we do is whenever the build is done, we get our jar file, we immediately push these jars into our third-party repositories where we maintain all these things. So we push here and we maintain a track of what is happening when it has been pushed. It is a development version jar or is it a production version jar? Everything. Like earlier, what happens is in server, we have, say, example, e-commerce .var file. Okay, this is on the date 18th of Feb. Okay, now there's a plan for deployment on 19th of Feb. What they do, immediately go to server. So it's a Unix box. So let's go to the server. What they do is we never sure whether the production var will work fine or it will not create any issues. So they create something as backup and or with some naming conventions as 18th Feb. And they create something in the same package and they deploy the latest version with e-commerce .var, which is on the 19th Feb. Okay. So once this is done and the production time, there will be a time for the production applications. So when your production is live, within that change request time, you have to make sure do all the sanity tests and make sure that nothing is failing, right? Everything would be fine and your system is running fine. Suddenly in mid of day, they say that there is some issue with your integration platforms and you have to revert the changes because you're not able to find, and it's a huge business. They want it to be reverted. So again, what happens? We go back, we revert the existing var file, the Feb, which is been taken as the backup. And then we just mark this as the latest version and then we restart the service. This is what happening in the earlier days, like at least till like 2015 and 16, right? So this was this way the deployment happens in the Unix system, so that they don't need to do a backup or maintain all the jars and vars for a longer time. So this maintain the last 2 or 3 versions of the var or jar, the build packages, and then they clear out everything. But this is kind of a hindrance, right? So whenever you're not sure like how many versions you need to maintain, what happens if this version is not going, and if you have something called as load balancing. Like if your application, there are two servers for your application, for e-commerce application. There is something, the server which is running in 8080, another one is also running at 8080, but it is a passive port, so that there is not running every time. Only if this server, which is in the say X server, is down, only then the Y server 8080 will be up. So these are the plans which we do whenever there is a issue in the other server. But right now we are much more developed, and we are actually expecting everything to be scalable in a minute or less than a minute. So what is happening right now is we need the package immediately to deploy in the latest thing and make it more scalable. Or if you want to create one more server immediately as Z server, and you wanted to have it in 8080 and some other region, say USA, then you need this particular var or jar immediately to be deployed. So in that case, you can't say transform from one server to another server, and which takes much time, and you need to have all the credentials to log into the server, transform that to the respective server, and then deploy it. So which is a headache thing. So what we have bought, they have introduced is, there's something called Artifactory. There are multiple things like JFrog, there are Nexus, there are multiple things. So all these Artifactories will maintain your packages, like how long you want, you can define it. It says everything is configurable, so you can define it. So let me show you a sample Artifactory. So this Artifactory is something which is not published as a public one. So if you see here the Maven repository, this is again an Artifactory maintenance where you're able to see the entire things, and all your jars would be maintained in one place, okay, which is in the mavenrepository.com, which is an open source to everyone. But if you're going for specific organizations, they maintain a private repositories, so which is not accessible to the third-party persons outside your organization. So they have their own host name, and within that, let's say just I wanted to go with something like this. And now if you see here, so we are maintaining multiple packages, and let me give something like this. Okay, so if you see like all the versions with 366.3, 397.1, 392.2, you have var versions, you have POM versions, everything, right? So this is the way your repository will load everything and keep it backup. And it will also have the latest modified date. So if you want to get the relevant information, like which commit, like when you're pushing your changes to a repository like GitHub or something, you have a commit ID, right? A unique ID which gets generated every time. So with that commit ID, you will be able to easily track which kind of push has been happened, when it happened, and based on that commit ID or the build number with the respective use cases, or wherever you are actually making a track of all these things, will be easy for us to consider whether this particular one can be taken into the next release or not, or is something we need to consider for our next scalable version or not. So all you have information here, and even you can have the relevant pom.xml and how you're actually packaging the entire thing. Everything you can actually have it here. So let's go to this thing little later, but you can have the commit information, like when the particular git commit happened, what was the commit ID, and what was the build number, like which build what succeeded. It is the first build, or like you were failed with multiple test cases, you fixed it, and post that you got some build number. Everything would be available in your Artifactory. So whenever we wanted to scale our package or scale our jar project into some other server, what we do is we just go into this Artifactory, we just connect to this Artifactory, we take the latest one based on few other key parameters which we need to consider, and we download this entire var file into the respective server where we're gonna launch our application. and make the server up, because you know this is a runnable file and it is completely successful file, and you're just going to create or just upscale it to a different server so that the load balancing would be easier. Because in an e-commerce application, when there is any offer or something, what happens, your entire crowd will be maximized, and the server which you're maintaining as of now for X and Y will not be sufficient. You might need to increase immediately to Z or ZX or ZA, something like you need to have additional servers where the crowd and the traffic would be diversified. So for that purpose, to do the scalability, we maintain something called Artifactory with all the packaging things, so that you might use either any kind of containerization like Docker or Kubernetes or through any cloud platforms. To scale your project in your new thing within less than a minute. Less than a minute. Okay, so this would be the usual way right now the industry is working on. So the Artifactory would be the place once you build, once your Maven clean install build is done, the jar will be immediately taken care into the Artifactory. How is done? What is the command and what are the steps you need to follow to push your changes immediately to the artifact is something we'll see again now. And before that, you have any questions on this? On the package of installation or the verify or any other lifecycle commands?
Lifecycle is fine for me.
Okay. Yeah.
And this testing is called as JUnit testing, right?
Yeah, JUnit. If you're going with Java, it's JUnit testing. If you're using an Angular, there's something called Jasmine. So for each application or each language, you have the relevant test cases dependencies which you need to download, and then you have to evaluate. The structure is basically like what are the inputs and what is the expected output and how your system behaves on your functional layer.
Yeah. Okay.
So the final stage, the final life cycle would be deploy. So this would be like the concept which I explained right now, right? It will be pushed to Artifactory and what happens, like how this is happening. That thing happens in your deploy lifecycle. So once your project is built, you can build it in any environment. You might have a lower testing environments, so you can push it there. Or if you want to push it to production, you can push it to the production. And you can also make a copy, like whatever you want, you can make a copy to the remote repositories like Artifactory or something. And you can give permission as well. Like only few persons can view this particular jar, because it is like even within the organization, if it's more confidential application, they might restrict only to that team members and all. So those kind of permissions can also be enhanced once you push your changes to the remote repositories. So I think like most of the banking related applications will have these permissions. So what happens, the project related jars or vars will not be exposed in the Nexus or Artifactories. The common open source files, right? Like either the open CSV, or it's something like testing JUnit test cases, or any kind of dependencies which are very common and used majorly by everything, that will have entire permission. But if something like a project X and project Y is getting created, those project X and Y will not be available in the Artifactory or in Nexus. So they restrict that conditions and permissions so that the other team members will not be able to extract and see the entire code. So such kind of things also can be done in this one. So whichever command you need to execute, you just need to have a prefix Maven and the respective cycle. That's it. No other things are required. Just if you want to go with test, give Maven test. If you want to go with Maven verify, just give Maven verify. If you want to just give install, Maven install. So everything you need to have the prefix as MVN. So
okay.
Till there's any doubt?
Yeah, this theory part is clear.
Okay, so like if you wanted to execute the same thing, so right, I'm not sure why the dependency is downloaded there. So let's say Maven clean, which is very much known. So right now we don't have anything here. So your target would be completely clean. Where did I go and execute?
So when we run this Maven clean, it will remove the jar file, right?
No, it will remove the jar file. All your target package will be cleared. I think some error in the Maven. So that is the thing it's showing me.
I think you changed the version. Instead of snapshot, you changed it to release, I guess.
Oh, okay. Did I do that?
The form.xml. Earlier it was snapshot.
Okay. Okay, this is the one. And if you want to do something verify, if you see for everything, the relevant plugins, the internal files will be called. Okay, so whenever we are doing verify, the internally, if you see, the entire thing is happening. Resources, compilation, test resources, test compile, because verify is basically for your integration test. So all your test related packages will be executed. Okay, so whenever if you have written n number of test cases, what happens? The number of test cases created, number of failures, how many got skipped. So there might be few things where you're expecting an error and that is the output of that assertion. Then that things would come here. And there might be cases like the test cases might be failed because of your assertions or if your functionality is not working. Then your build will be failed and you'll have the error count and the relevant description here. So right now we just had one test file and doesn't have anything. So you had everything as 0. So in this case, there's something called Surefire report. So if you go into the target, there's something called Surefire reports. And every time your report is getting generated, you have something like this created. So this will tell like number of test cases executed, which was passed and which was failed in the both formats. Okay, like what are the dependencies, how many internally the libraries were installed, and entire information would be created as a report. So what we do is whenever we want to automate our entire system, we just depend on this Surefire reports and we make sure that your entire test cases are passed. So we make sure that errors count is always 0. We don't worry about the failures or runs. We make sure the errors is always 0 so that when you're trying to automate your system, there won't be any kind of issues later when you're trying to build your system. So that is the reason we are always dependent on this Surefire reports whenever we have the Maven as our build tool. So let me show some other things so that you'll get an idea. So if you see like each file will have the relevant test cases and how much time it took and what was this. So if your test cases is sometimes what they do is whoever is the developer is working, they might give a command in the build file, in the Jenkins file or somewhere where your project is getting built, they just give skip test. So what happens, none of the Surefire reports will be executed and your build will always be successful, but you'll get a lot of bugs and issues when it is being deployed to your production or something. So that is the reason we always validate the Surefire reports and we see like we got the relevant information or not. So this is the way we can actually use the Maven verify and the Maven test. So same thing does by the Maven test. If you see again, the packages which is getting called in part of test are also similar to the part of verify. So there is no much difference between this. Only thing is like if you have integration test, it would actually go in better. But otherwise, both verify and test are almost same. There's nothing much difference between these two. So you can just go and use just test thing alone. Don't need to go for verify itself. And then finally the Maven install. This is the one which does everything. If you don't want that, you can, if you want to do it explicitly as Maven package, you can go and do it again, but internally it will again call the entire thing and your jar package will be created again. If you want to just give Maven install, that also does the same thing. It calls the entire resources, entire life cycle, and then it finally gives you the jar package. So resources, compile, test. So whatever command you're trying to execute, the final thing would be the same. The install does an additional step of packaging also. So all the steps would be done in part of install. So we never go for or use the other commands like verify or install the package or test or something. We just give Maven clean install, which executes all the life cycles and give you the final packaging jar file. So this is the way you need to execute your Java project, Maven Java project. Okay, I'm not sure why here the dependencies are getting. Just a moment, the Maven is not getting built. I'm just figuring it out.
So we are expecting 5.0 version.
5.0 to be downloaded, but since this is not targeted to that, I'm not able to download it. Let me try from here.
Yeah, so Maven takes care of downloading the Java,
yeah, it
right?
takes care of downloading from the repository. So right now I have 4.0. So 4.6. I want the latest one to be downloaded. I took the latest one. I got that. Okay. So the thing is, the repository link is not shared. That is the issue. I need to update my pom.xml. I completely forgot it. Okay. So right now, all my dependencies are getting downloaded from my organization. So since I'm downloading it from an explicit open source, I need to give the place where exactly it has to be downloaded from. Okay. So if you see here, this is coming from mavenrepository.com. But if you see internally in my form.xml files, so those are getting downloaded from something called as artifactory.comcast.net. Okay. So that is the reason I was not able to download it in my A case.
So this one is the JFrog Artifactory that you are
saying. JFrog Artifactory, where I'm maintaining all the repositories. So from there, I can download it, all the related versionings from the environment, because it's having the proxy related thing. I'm not able to download explicitly from my outsource, because why this is happening and why we are having a restriction here is most of the open source dependencies might be vulnerable. So what they does is internally in each organization, they go and check the relevant stable version, which is not having more than CVE ratio. And based on that, they download and keep it in their local repositories. And whoever has to use it within the organization has to download from that particular one and the version which is available in that particular organization.
Okay. Can we delete the folder and try build once again so that we can verify that the 4.6 is getting installed again?
Sorry, what do you want me to do?
Can you delete that open CSV folder and then build it again?
Right now it's somewhere open. Just a minute. So let me close this.
Okay, it's fine. I think I will install Maven in my system and try it.
Let me give it. So this is a major issue. Like whenever you have the dependent ones, it will not delete it immediately. We open, right? It's open. I'm not sure on this, Kirbal. I'm not sure where the file is open. I won't open it anywhere else.
Yeah, that's fine. Try it on my system.
I can check it that, but most probably this should be an issue. Because I downloaded earlier from a different package. So my things are also not clear. Maybe we can see this tomorrow also. Like tomorrow, like which time would be comfortable? Like tomorrow evening, 8 o'clock would be fine for you. Like because we missed few classes this week. So tomorrow, can we connect in the same time by 8 o'clock?
Can I check and let you know? Not sure.
Okay, yeah, you let me know if you don't have any work. Like if you're okay with the weekend, we can go ahead. Otherwise, we can connect again on Sunday also if required.
Okay, let's start this in WhatsApp so that Janaki is also aware.
Sorry.
Let's put a note in the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll just make a note on that. Yeah, because we missed few classes, right? So it would be great if we can match it up on the next 2 days. Yeah, I'll just figure it out why this is not happening, and then I'll fix my repository issue also, so that from tomorrow's class there won't be any delay in this. So got a basic idea about Maven, right? So once we are clear about it, we can start working on it a little faster because it's just a configuration setup. It will be one-time activity.
Yeah. So Maven concept is clear. Theoretically, it's clear.
Yeah, the same thing will happen with Gradle too. Only thing is this structure Maven is like kind of XML. Whereas in case of your Gradle, it would be kind of a Groovy file. It's a script file. That's it. So rest all things, whatever process we follow in Maven, the same thing is happening in the Gradle. So it is just like a wrapper on top of your Maven is something called as Gradle. So which is more efficient in building the packages. So that is why most of the organizations will prefer Gradle. But as a developer perspective, and if you want to enhance something to tie up with your Jenkins related CI/CD pipeline, then they prefer to go with Maven. Yeah. So we'll see it in detail tomorrow also on this Maven and like next class, and we'll complete the CSV file. And once you're good with the CSV packaging with Maven, then we'll see how the concurrent thread happens in the CSV code.
Okay. So concurrent thread is like writing into CSV file.
Writing in a CSV, like how the multi-threading can be used using CSV.
So same way we can for databases concurrent threads.
Sorry.
Same way we can explore the database writing part.
Yeah, we are experiencing the JDBC API of the Java. So once we are done with that, we can experience the same thing using that also using multi-threading concept.
There is one more, Hibernate, right? Can we?
Yeah, Hibernate is an ORM framework. So once you're good with JDBC API, like how do you connect your database and whatever queries you execute usually in your DB, the same thing can be done from Java. But the Hibernate is something which relates your objects and your relational tables in a more efficient way. So you don't need to write your queries again and again from your SQL perspective. You'll write everything in the object perspective.
So it's like JDBC is the basic one.
Star from employee table. And in your employee table, you had employee underscore ID. But in Java, you had employee ID in a camel case. So if you want to write a query in your DB, what you'll write, select employee underscore ID from employee. This would be just a query from your Java, sorry, in your DB. In your Java, it will be select employee ID, the usual camel case, from employee, the class. This would be the structure. But how do you relate your class and then the table? How are we going to map them? That is what the Hibernate framework does.
So Hibernate makes our life easier compared to JDBC.
Yeah, exactly. So it is kind of an interface that you don't need to transform everything in terms of Oracle understanding or in terms of Java understanding. It would be kind of an interface for us to transform everything and then give us the relevant results. So everything is again a configuration. So other than that, the DB concepts would remain same. So whatever you are doing as a procedure or as a functional key, parent key and foreign key relationship, like one-to-one or one-to-many mappings, everything would remain same, but we can achieve everything using this particular Hibernate jars. That's it.
Okay, so listen and let you know over WhatsApp on the time for the next class.
I'll ping now, and based on the response, we can have the next class on the weekend. Yeah. Thank you.